This is London calling in the overseas service of the British Broadcasting Corporation. Before I read the news, we are broadcasting important messages to the masters of Norwegian and Danish ships from the British government. The message to Norwegian ships is as follows. A message which has been broadcast from Oslo, telling Norwegian ships to proceed to neutral ports, should of course be disregarded. Oslo is in the hands of the Germans, and the Norwegian government is conducting the national resistance from another temporary capital. The message, therefore, is sent by the Germans. It does not come from the Norwegian government or owners, and would obviously be contrary to their wishes. Norwegian ships should call at the nearest British or French port for advice. This announcement will now be repeated in Norwegian.
Her er en viktig bekjentgjørelse fra den britiske regjering til kapteiner av norske skipe. Ingen notis skulle bli tatt av en kunngjørelse som er blitt kringkastet fra Oslo, med instruksjoner til norske skipe om å begi seg til nøytrale havner. Oslo er i tysk besittelse, og den norske regjering utøver den nasjonale motstand fra en annen midlertidig hovedstad. Kunngjørelsen er derfor utsendt efter tysk initiativ. Den stammer ikke fra den norske regjering eller fra norske skipsredere, og det sier seg selv at den er i motsetning til deres ønsker. Norske skipe skulle begi seg til nærmeste britiske eller franske havn for å søke veiledning der.
The message addressed by the British government to the masters of all Danish ships begins by pointing out that a broadcast from Copenhagen to Danish ships, telling them to proceed to Italy, Spain, or other neutral ports, was made under German dictation and should be disregarded. Here is the full message in Danish.
Her er en vigtig meddelelse fra den britiske regering til alle danske skibe. Et budskab til danske skibe, der anmoder dem om at gå ind til italienske, spanske eller andre neutrale havne, er blevet udsendt under tysk diktat over København og Oslo Radio. Dette budskab skal ikke efterkommes. I betragtning af den tvungne okkupation af Danmark vil kaptajner og sømænd fra danske skibe, som går ind til de allieredes havne, blive behandlet som venner, ikke som fjender. Det britiske admiralitet yder en beskyttelse til sådanne fartøjer. De vil blive vel modtaget og erholde vederlag for deres tjeneste. Kaptajn Coombs, chef for Skibsførernes Forening, The Officers Federation, og vicepræsident for Foreningen af officerer i den internationale handelsmarine, The International Mercantile Marine Officers Association, har bedt os om at sende dem følgende personlige budskab, og at anmode dem om så vidt muligt at lade det gå videre til alle, det måtte vedrøre. Han sender hilsener til alle danske kaptajner, navigatører, maskinmestre og radiotelegrafister, og anmoder dem om at styre deres skib ind i en allieret havn. Deres land er nu i hænderne på en magt, som har tilsidesat søens traditioner, der er bygget op gennem århundreder af sømænd af den rette slags. En hver dansk sømand, som indfinder sig i en allieret havn, vil modtage alt støtte fra vores organisation. Mr. John Marchbanks, vicepræsident for den internationale organisation af transportarbejdere, The International Transport Workers Federation, generalsekretær Mr. Edo Femmen, samt sekretæren for sømændenes sektion, har bedt os om at sende dem følgende budskab, og anmoder dem om så vidt muligt at lade det gå videre til alle, det måtte vedrøre, og at overrække det til alle medlemmer af deres besætning. Danske sømænd, fyrbødere og hovmestre. Den internationale organisation af transportarbejdere, ITF, anmoder dem indtrængende om ikke at tillade, at de bliver benyttet som et led i den tyske krigsmaskine, og henstiller derfor til dem at hjælpe med til, at deres skib bliver ført til en britisk eller allieret havn, i stedet for til en neutral havn.
Well, that is the end of the announcements to the masters of Norwegian and Danish ships. This is London calling. Most of this bulletin is concerned with the war in Norway and on the North Sea, and of developments in the United States and Scandinavia. Here is the news. In Norway, King Haakon is reported to have rejected a German demand that he recognized as his cabinet the puppet government set up by the Germans in Oslo to lend a facade of respectability to their attempts to gain control of the country. So one more German hope of escaping the need to face Norwegian resistance has failed, and the Germans are having to fight for every inch of land they occupy. Apart from coastal batteries and forts, whose gallant fights have already been mentioned, the Norwegian army is now mobilizing and taking up defense positions. German attempts to penetrate inland from Oslo by lorry and bus, protected by aircraft, have met with stiff resistance, and there are reports of heavy fighting at Elverum, 45 miles northeast of Oslo, and at various other points round the capital. In the north and west, the Norwegians are showing the same fighting spirit. Round Narvik in the north, units of the Norwegian army have never withdrawn further than 10 miles from the coast, where they found it easy to improvise strong defense lines in the mountains. Norwegian army officers are confident of their ability to hold the passes, and they point out that Tromsø, which is farther north than Narvik, is still in Norwegian hands. This morning, the battle for Norway is still obscure. Throughout the night, all reports have come from Sweden, and beyond the account of the Battle of Narvik Fjord, which Mr. Chamberlain gave the House of Commons, there has been no statement issued in London. During the evening, there were persistent reports that the Allies had recaptured the Norwegian ports of Bergen and Trondheim. They were not confirmed in London. Early this morning, a Stockholm message said that Monsieur Hambro, Speaker of the Norwegian Parliament, had announced in Stockholm that he had received a communication from the commander in Bergen that British forces were now in possession of that city. There is no further news about Trondheim. All reports agree that naval actions with heavy German losses have taken place in the Skagerrak, the 80-mile wide arm of the sea which separates Norway from Denmark. Late last night, a battle was raging south of the Swedish port of Gothenburg at the entrance to the Kattegat, which separates Denmark from Sweden. There are also reports of engagements all along the west coast of Norway. It's clear that units of the British Navy forced the Skagerrak, and while some were engaged off Gothenburg, others were either in Oslo Fjord or the estuary leading to it. Accounts of German losses off Gothenburg vary greatly. One report says that 2 transports and 4 German cruisers were sunk. Another says that 5 transports and 3 cruisers went to the bottom. All reports agree that the battle lasted nearly all day and that the German transports were dispersed. Firing was still heard early this morning. On the other side of the Skagerrak, the British sank a destroyer off Arendal, and the Norwegian cruiser minelayer Olaf Tryggvason sank a German warship off Horten, the port of Oslo. This is now stated to be the cruiser Emden. The Emden was commissioned in 1925 and had a complement of 534 men. A conservative estimate of yesterday's German losses is 9 warships. These are 6 cruisers, 2 destroyers, and 1 undefined. Furthermore, the Germans have had 2 cruisers and 3 destroyers damaged, and 7 supply ships and a number of transports sunk. The British losses so far reported are 1 destroyer sunk, 1 driven ashore, 1 badly damaged, and 1 slightly damaged. The news of the operations in the Skagerrak followed a brilliant action in the Narvik Fjord yesterday morning, which was described by Mr. Chamberlain in the House of Commons. In this engagement, 5 British destroyers steamed up the fjord and engaged 6 German destroyers of the latest type, which were supported by shore batteries and by guns newly mounted ashore. 1 1,600-ton German destroyer was torpedoed and believed sunk. 3 were heavily hit and left in flames. 6 merchant ships, suspected of containing the stores of the German expedition, were also sunk. On their way out, the British force met the German ship Ravensfeld, believed to be carrying the reserve ammunition of the landed German forces, and blew her up. In this action, HMS Hunter was sunk. Hardy was so severely damaged that she had to be run ashore and became a wreck. Hotspur received serious damage. Hostile was slightly damaged, and Havoc, the 5th destroyer, was untouched. Despite the superior force of the enemy when our ships withdrew, the Germans were in no condition to attempt pursuit. 2 German cruisers were destroyed by Norwegian action in the early stages of the invasion. The 10,000-ton Blücher was blown up in a minefield after being badly damaged by Norwegian shore batteries at Oslo Fjord, and the 6,000-ton Karlsruhe was sunk by Norwegian batteries at Kristiansand while trying to land German forces. Another German cruiser was torpedoed by a British submarine off the south of Norway on Tuesday. She is believed sunk. Damage to 2 other German cruisers has been done by aircraft. Long-range bombers of the Royal Air Force raided German naval units anchored in the port of Bergen, and 1 heavy bomb was seen to strike the after part of a cruiser of the Köln class. Other warships are believed to have been damaged. All the British aircraft returned safely from that raid, and yesterday morning planes of the Fleet Air Arm took up the attack at Bergen and scored 3 hits on a German cruiser. British aircraft were busy along all parts of the Norwegian coast yesterday, noting numbers and descriptions of German ships. Several were engaged by enemy machines. The Germans had a bad day in the air as well as on the sea. At least 7 and probably 14 German bombers were destroyed without loss to British aircraft or shipping. 4 of the German bombers were destroyed in the course of a fruitless night raid on Scapa Flow. The attack was carried out by successive waves of large and small formations of bombers, which dropped bombs and machine-gunned Stromness and Kirkwall. They did no damage to warships or other shipping, or to property on land, and the only casualty was 1 man slightly wounded. 3 of the raiders were destroyed by anti-aircraft fire, and another was shot down by fighter aircraft. Royal Air Force planes also damaged 2 more of the German bombers so severely that it's most unlikely that they would be able to return to their bases. 2 of the other enemy machines known to have been destroyed were shot down by Hurricanes of the Fighter Command while they were carrying out an attack on a convoy off the Scottish coast. A 3rd German machine is believed to have been shot down in the same engagement. But the most spectacular of the Royal Air Force exploits was carried out by 2 long-distance fighters over Norway. They attacked 2 German bombers about to land on a Norwegian aerodrome and sent 1 crashing to the ground. The second was very badly damaged, and a 3rd machine on the ground was damaged and probably destroyed when the fighters set a refueling tank on fire. On their way home, the fighters attacked a 4th German bomber, which was so severely damaged that it's unlikely to have reached home.